Chapter 4. Pom didn't know when the reek of death was replaced by the soothing scent of rain on the wind, but the girl was anything but soothed. Her face was swollen and her chest ached. Her voice ran ragged. When she thought she didn't have any tears left, more came to her surprise. Pom's shoulders slumped with the weight of her village. Her people, everyone was gone. She sniffled and tried to stop her chin from trembling. Ragam and Nabri had shed no tears. They both stood resolute as they followed the boy who led them. Pom knew the boy's name was Nels. He was dressed strangely. In fact, all of these people were. Nobody wore pelts like her people. Instead, they wore linen, soft and woven, adapting easily to the form of their bodies. They wore tunics, cloaks, heavy boots, and belts. Strapped to the belts were a myriad of weapons. Pom had heard of soldiers before. They were supposed to wave a single banner and have matching uniforms. These soldiers were nothing like that. Pom studied Nels for as long as she could. Anything to keep her distracted. Her eyes finally fell upon the flickering flame of his torch. She stared until it burned. Before the first raindrop fell, they reached a small clearing through the thicket of the trees. Makeshift tents were quickly being erected. There were soldiers every which way. Some looked tired and sullen, while others guffawed and spoke with one another. There was a large pot half filled with stew towards the center of the camp. Many men sat around the dying embers with their clay bowls in hand, though by the looks of it, they had already had their fill. Lucky for us, there's no storm coming, just a light rain, it seems. That means we're finally able to make camp, Nels said as he turned to the trio. If you're hungry, I can show you where all the supplies are. If not, then we should see Lord Lavas immediately. Even if we were hungry, do you think we could eat? Nabri finally spoke. Her voice was sharp, like the edge of a dagger, but Pom thought she heard it waver. Nels stared at his boots in response. We're fine. We'd like to meet your lord, Ragam said. With a nod, Nels gestured for them to follow. They made their way to a giant tent that looked as if it used to be white. It was tattered and blemished now. 4 steeds were tied just outside of the marred canvas, drinking from a wooden trough. 2 tall men stood at the entrance on guard duty. They held long spears with points at the ends, just like the ones Pom and Frias used for fishing. Her stomach twisted. Nels greeted the guards curtly before the woman with the marigold hair appeared in the opening. She beckoned them inside. I am third in command. My name is Omia Theoria. She formally introduced herself to Pom and Nabri. Her expression was soft while something far away swam behind her eyes. Pom didn't know why, but she felt as if she could trust Omia. The knotted muscles in her shoulders relaxed. Omia turned to regard a large man sitting at a desk. This is Lord Lavas, son of Nemir, the Valhi of Justice. Pom gasped. She had never seen such a hulking form before. In fact, she had seen nothing quite like Lord Lavas. He was at least 3 heads taller than the tallest man she had ever seen. His shoulders and arms were burly and hard. He had a thick black beard and his skin was the color of shallow river stones. He mulled over an assortment of papers sprawled across the small wooden table before turning to greet the villagers. I am filled with great sorrow for losing life tonight, he began. There is nothing I can do for their souls now, or forth pain you are all feeling. However, if you need any accommodation, I will readily oblige. My name is Lavas, the vigil of the arena and protector of this realm. Even Ragam's eyes went wide at the sight of the unnatural man. Lord Lavas walked from behind his table and stood before the 3. Pom could feel cold energy radiating from his body like the wind. The Lord's visage blurred as Pom tried to focus. Was this night even real? Every word sounded as if it had traveled through all the oceans of Epirah before hitting her ears, muddled and distant. Her pendant sat cold on her chest. The man who stood before her wasn't a man at all. He was some sort of divine Valhi. No, a Valhalla, the offspring of a human and a deity. Everyone from her village was gone. Frias, Gro, and Lo. Ragam sent them back to the village to be with their Osar. Their Osar. Pom's stomach took a violent turn as she raced out of the Lord's tent. She barely made it past the horse's trough before retching on what little was in her stomach. Her entire world spun. She couldn't think. She couldn't feel. Everything went black. Voices came and went through the darkness, still muted and far away. She wondered how long it had been since the world had expired. Was it all some sort of twisted dream? Perhaps a demon had infiltrated her mind. Pom saw a glowing form appear in the distance. It shined against the obsidian world. Pom willed her legs to approach, but it proved difficult. It was like walking knee-deep in thick sludge, though when she looked at her feet, she saw nothing. Just the same world, of ink. Pom felt possessed as she pushed ahead. She needed to get to that shining beacon, whatever it was. As she approached, she realized it was a person. Pom tried to run. As she got closer, the figure's appearance became more clear. It was a girl. She was the same height as Pom. She was dressed in peculiar armor with the scales of a scarlet adder. The armor was clean and shone just like the girl's skin. On her head was a thick helmet with long edges that curved outward. Pom stood still when she saw that the girl had no face, just willowy skin pulled over a skull. Her eyes caught a glimmer of something hanging from the woman's neck. Pom's breath hitched. It was her pendant. Pom woke up with a jagged gasp, making Nels jump and drop a bucket of hot water onto himself. She sat straight up and grasped at her pendant. It was still there. She sighed as she turned the cool crystal over in her hands. Pom finally noticed the eyes on her. She jerked her head toward Nels. He wasn't just looking, but staring. Was he angry with her? She held her breath for a moment before a small smile spread across his face. He didn't care about spilling the bucket, after all. Thank the 9 you're awake, he breathed. I'll go fetch the others. As Nels exited the tent, sunlight briefly spilled in. Pom sat in a minute cot. Her feet fell over the edge onto the soft ground. She was in her own personal tent. It was nothing as grand as the others, and obviously used to store dry goods by the half-empty barrels that stood around her, but she still felt a tinge of guilt creep inside her stomach. Pom didn't have time to ponder over her dream or think much at all before Nabri burst through the entrance. Her face was red and swollen from crying. Her hair was unkempt. Brown tufts were splayed in various directions all around her head. She looked as if she had wrestled with a wild beast all night. Pom, Nabri cried as she fell to her knees at her sister's feet. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. Pom was dumbfounded. She didn't hear Ragam enter, but she should have known he was there. He was always there. He read the confusion on her face. Nabri has been unwell since you fainted, Ragam said with a glimmer of a smile. We're glad to see you awake. Pom scrambled to her knees as she embraced her sister. They gripped each other tightly, as if they were trying to hold all their broken pieces together. However, Pom couldn't bring herself to cry any longer. Instead, she burned. She wanted to steal everything that had been stolen from her. She wanted to protect Nabri and Ragam. She wanted revenge. The Valhalla saw a vision of you overnight, Ragam said. He says it's important that you should know.